The Sahel's crisis, why coups repeat and democracy struggles to return. Across the Sahel, coups keep repeating not because leaders fail, but because the systems beneath them do. This is the story behind that cycle. West Africa is not short on leaders. It is short on systems that outlive them. From Mali to Guinea, from Niger to Burkina Faso, military takeovers have become so frequent that they no longer shock the world. But coups do not repeat because soldiers enjoy power. They repeat because something deeper keeps failing. The pattern no one can ignore. Over the past decade, West Africa has experienced a wave of coups unlike any other region in the world. Each one follows a familiar rhythm. A government is accused of corruption or weakness. The military steps in, promising order and reform. Public frustration turns into cautious hope. Time passes, and the same problems remain. Different uniforms, different slogans, the same outcome. Coups are not accidents. They are symptoms. A huge thank you to our subscribers for your amazing support. To our first-time viewers and guests, we're thrilled to have you here. Your engagement is just as valuable. If you're enjoying this, taking a second to hit subscribe would be fantastic and help us keep creating content you love. When democracy feels distant. In theory, elections should provide accountability. In reality, many citizens across West Africa experience democracy as distant, elite-driven, disconnected from daily hardship. When elections change faces but not lives, frustration grows. And in moments of crisis, insecurity, inflation, unemployment, the military presents itself as the last institution that still works, not because it is better, but because everything else feels broken. Security first and everything else later. The Sahel's defining crisis is insecurity. Armed groups exploit borders, weak states, and neglected regions. Civilian governments struggle to respond quickly. Militaries step forward with a clear promise. Give us power now. We'll restore order first. Democracy can wait. For many citizens living under daily threat, that argument is convincing. But history shows a difficult truth. Security gained through force alone rarely becomes permanent. Without accountability, military governments begin to resemble the systems they replaced. The economic trap. Coups don't happen only because of politics. They happen because of economics. Youth unemployment remains high. Inflation erodes purchasing power. Natural wealth rarely translates into public benefit. When a generation feels locked out of opportunity, legitimacy collapses. And once legitimacy disappears, uniforms begin to look like solutions. Foreign pressure, local consequences. External actors matter, but not always in the way they are discussed. Sanctions, diplomatic pressure, and aid suspensions are meant to encourage democracy. But on the ground, they often deepen economic pain, strengthen nationalist narratives, push military leaders to harden their stance. The result is a feedback loop. Pressure increases defiance. Defiance delays transition. Delay fuels the next coup. Why coups keep coming back? Coups repeat because institutions are weak, trust is broken, security is fragile, economies exclude the majority, remove one leader, and another fills the gap. The system survives. The cycle continues. Can the cycle be broken? Breaking the coup cycle does not begin with elections alone. It begins with institutions that function beyond personalities, security forces accountable to civilians, economies that include young people, leaders constrained by law, not popularity. Until then, coups will remain the region's emergency reset button, not because they work, but because nothing else feels available. Bringing it back to Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso is not an exception. It is a reflection. What happens there will echo across the Sahel, just as events in Mali and Niger already have. The real question is no longer, why do coups happen? It is, why does the region keep returning to them? And until that answer changes, the cycle will continue with new faces, new promises, and familiar endings. Because in West Africa, history isn't repeating by accident. Can the Sahel ever return to civilian rule? In the Sahel, the question is no longer when elections will return. The real question is whether civilian rule can survive once it does. The broken promise of transition. Across the Sahel, military governments speak the same language. They call themselves transitional. They promise reform. They ask for time. But time has a habit of stretching. Transitions become extensions. Extensions become new norms. And civilian rule begins to feel theoretical. The problem is not the word transition. The problem is what rarely follows it. Why elections alone are not enough. Elections are necessary, but they are not magic. In fragile states, elections without institutions often produce contested results, weak mandates, political paralysis. When courts lack independence and security forces answer upward instead of outward, ballots lose meaning. Democracy cannot rest on voting days alone. It must live in the systems that enforce the results. The security paradox. Civilian rule in the Sahel faces a paradox. To govern, civilians need security. To provide security, they rely on the military. This creates imbalance. When soldiers fight daily and politicians appear distant, authority shifts quietly but permanently. Over time, uniforms become symbols of competence and civilians become symbols of risk. Until civilian leaders can command trust during crisis, the military will always hover nearby. The economic reality no one can ignore. Civilian rule will not return through constitutions alone. It will return through livelihoods. Young people across the Sahel are not rejecting democracy, they are rejecting exclusion. Without jobs, education, infrastructure, opportunity, political systems lose relevance. Democracy without dividends feels hollow, and hollow systems collapse under pressure. The role of external actors limits of influence. Foreign partners often speak of restoring democracy, but pressure without partnership rarely works. Sanctions can weaken juntas, but they can also weaken civilians. External influence is most effective when it strengthens institutions quietly, supports local legitimacy, respects political reality. Civilian rule cannot be imposed. It must be rebuilt from within. What a real return to civilian rule would require. A genuine return would demand more than elections. It would require security forces accountable to civilian oversight, courts trusted by the public, political parties rooted beyond capital cities, economies that reward participation, not proximity. This is slow work, uncelebrated work, but it is the only work that lasts. Is it possible, or is the cycle too deep? History offers no guarantees, but it offers lessons. Countries escape cycles not by removing leaders, but by changing incentives. When power becomes harder to seize than to share, coups lose appeal. That moment has not yet arrived in the Sahel, but history also shows this. Cycles are not permanent. They endure until something finally breaks them. A quiet, honest ending. The Sahel's future will not be decided by slogans. It will be decided by whether systems outgrow personalities. Civilian rule can return, but only when it proves stronger than fear, faster than crisis, and more credible than the gun. Until then, the region remains suspended between order and freedom, between urgency and patience, between what is promised and what is delivered. This is Sal Peer, signing off from VlogND, where we work to uncover the true stories of Africa and the world. Thank you for watching. If this analysis challenged your thinking and this series helped you see the Sahel more clearly, subscribing helps us continue this work and ensure you never miss what comes next. We appreciate your support.
Burkina Faso.